Hi, my name is Lisa Bradner. I am a reporter here and a friend with John Knight, who is a World War II veteran. And we're going to be talking with John and just about his time during the war, mainly in the Pacific. Let's get going, and you can tell me how it all began.
I graduated in summer '42 and worked in the shipyard for 2 or 3 months with a couple of friends, and we all decided to join the Navy together. And I went in the Navy because I'm kind of a clean freak, and I don't like mud and dirt and all that kind of stuff. And I all the time as a swimmer and a springboard diver, so I like the water. Swimming in Santa Monica around the pier, and so I thought, well, I better go in the Navy. I don't want to be in that Army because you get dirty.
That's great. I don't think I ever heard that one before, but no, that's great. That's very interesting. So you went ahead and you joined the Navy. So that's great. And so, but you were only 17 years old. That's correct?
Yeah, I went. Yeah. I was only 17, so my father, so he had to sign for me.
Right.
And a few months later, I was, I turned 18, but to get in, he had to sign for me. And so we were at the recruiting place, and we were there for, I don't know, it seemed like 3 or 4 days.
Where was it in LA? Where do you remember?
In LA, downtown LA.
Oh, okay.
Downtown Los Angeles.
All right.
When I'd finished up my work and I was ready to go, I was working with first class torpedoman. He yelled at me, he said, "Hey, John, by the way, your father is in the back room with his pants down. He's trying to join."
You probably were very embarrassed about that one. I can't imagine. So I understand that you wanted to attend radio and signalman school. So that's still when you're in LA. Can you talk a little bit about that? Does that help you to get in, before you head off to the Navy?
After all my boot camp training, I was ready to ship out. And a messenger came running into the barracks calling my name. And I thought, well, what in the world? He was going to take me to regimental headquarters. So we went over to regimental headquarters, and here I'm an 18-year-old boot, and we walk in there, and all these admirals in gold braid and officers all over the place. And he took me into an office, and then he left, and there was a lieutenant sitting behind the desk. So he said I had 2 schools in Minnesota and one in Chavez Ravine. Chavez Ravine was radio school. And I lived in Echo Park, blocks from there. So he told me I had a low grade reading Morse code in the initial test, but I just could barely pass. So he gave me an okay to go to radio school. And funny part of it, within a couple of days, that code was very easy for me to learn.
Okay, that's great. All right. So then at that point, I understand that there was you and a couple of other fellows that received scholarships to USC, which is quite interesting. It's hard to do, by the way. So, but for some reason you chose not to go. Why was that?
Out of about 300 or 400, I was number one in McLean out of the 2 divisions, and then the 2 other guys were second and third. So there are 3 openings available. So my lieutenant was Lieutenant Booth, and he came to me on a Friday afternoon. He said, "John, I have great news for you, and I've got a scholarship for you." He said, "You also can't get married during the time you're at SC, the 3 years." And I said, "Well, Lieutenant Booth, that's probably the greatest thing I'll see in my life, the scholarship. But I'm getting married Sunday night, so I couldn't accept the scholarship."
Well, that's too bad. Well, that was nice.
At the altar,
Yeah.
I couldn't do that.
Well, we'll have to bring you to USC just to walk around. um, so, um, so you also had special training for merchant ships. Can you tell me a little bit about what it entailed?
I had received my third class petty officer rating, and then a call came in for radio operators for merchant ships. They were very short of radio operators, and so got a chance to train for merchant ships. So we had to train because the whole procedure is different in the merchant marine than it is in the Navy. So we really had to start over, so to speak. But it was easy to pick up because we had already gone through all the Navy training. It was just a matter of digesting all the procedure.
So I'm probably not saying this correctly, but Cape Manapan. What was the importance of that? And I understand that there was some secrets there, some Top Gun secret.
I was on two of those, Cape St. George and the Cape Manapan, and they were excellent ships. Kind of a small cargo ship, but we were leaving. I think it was Guam, and we had unloaded all of our supplies and cargo, and we were heading for the States, and we were out just a short distance, and a speedboat came after us, sending semaphore. And I was on the flying bridge with the captain, and I told him, Captain, we've got a message from a speedboat chasing us down, and he wants us to stop, and they want to come aboard. Did that. We stopped, and they came aboard, and they gave us new orders to go to Prince Rupert, Canada. And there's a secret ammunition dump there. We didn't know that at the time. And they loaded us with, first they had to line the ship with wood, so intense. And we're loading 500-pound bombs that they lined the ship with wood so that there was no contact. Had to be 15 inches away from any metal. And then they loaded us with 5,000 tons of 500-pound bombs. And then we took all those bombs to the island of Saipan.
Okay, quite a bit of islands, indeed.
Well, yeah. The whole Solomon chain. The same islands where John F. Kennedy went, but he was only in the lower part of the Solomons when he got when his PT boat got hit.
Right.
And okay. I forget exactly where he was, but I think he was around New Guinea, which is the lower part of the Solomon Islands. I went all the way through, all the way up the top of the Admiralty Islands, and then Bougainville, and then Tokyo Bay.
You were there on most of the islands. Was there one specific one that you talked about that you'd like to discuss? There was the Japanese were getting ready to bomb your ship. Just
before we got into the Guadalcanal, we were shot at with 2 torpedoes, and we were still on what you call a zigzag course, like a halfback with a football, to avoid the Japanese getting a fix on our ship. And but we were shot at with 2 torpedoes at the same time, and fortunately they both missed. One went across the bow, and one went across the stern at the same time, but both of them missed.
Well, that's good.
Do you remember me talking right now? We had 6,000 troops aboard. We were replacing the 1st Marine Division.
Do you remember what year that was?
I think it was 1943.
Okay. So that was at Guadalcanal. Okay. And can you talk a little bit about Okinawa? And there was a typhoon that was going on at one point. Do you remember that?
We were in the harbor. We were already anchored, and we hadn't started to unload. We were waiting to unload, and I was in the Radio Shack and getting messages about a typhoon coming in the direction of Okinawa. So I kept tracing it on the radio, and found out that eventually that it was coming to Okinawa, and it got to the point where I got a report that it was going to hit dead center where we were 150 miles an hour. So I was keeping the captain informed, and when I told him that it was going to hit dead center where we were 150 miles an hour, he said, "Well, we're pulling up anchor," and I thank him for that because he was a very experienced captain. And probably all be killed, but anyway, we upped anchor and we went the open seas. Even though the waves were 40, 50 feet high, we're safer in the open seas than we are near a shore or a reef. And we lost 13 ships in that typhoon.
I'm glad you're still here to tell us this story. It's quite interesting.
Thanks to that captain and all of his experience, he knew exactly what to do. And we just took off, and we joined some other ships at sea. And we were heading away from the typhoon, and what you do, you head into the waves and crash with the bow into the waves. And some of them in the distance would disappear. And I thought they were gone underwater. Then pretty soon they would rise like a mountain.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Love to hear that. So, can we talk just a little bit about some of your friends on the ship? I know there was one story that was really not sad for you, but towards the end, there were moments where your friends are no longer with you.
Yeah, we had a hospital ship aboard, and so right. we took the 1st Marine Division, and then there was a lot of casualties, and there were a lot of injured men, and they were in our hospital, and of course we were bringing them back to the States. And of course, I made a lot of friends with these guys, these 1st Marine Division guys. And then, unfortunately, some of the guys that were badly injured didn't make it. And probably the most thing that still plagues me is having to bury those men at sea. I was on that detail, and probably the worst experience of my life. When they told the family that they had died and they'd buried them at sea, I just wondered what the kind of reaction it may have been emotionally for them to know that not only did they lose their son, but way out there in the middle of that vast ocean.
Yeah, that's rough. That's got to be really hard. Yeah. What was one of your most, I want to say, fun, interesting times that you were able to have to get off onto one of the islands? I believe you had told me about one of them where you guys had some good times. Do you recall any of that?
Well, one fun thing we did was at one island. we were there. We knew we were going to be there for 2 or 3 weeks. We just taken this island over from the Japanese, and so we knew we were going to be there for a while. They didn't have a dock for us to unload. So,
which island was it?
Well, that was way up in the Admiralty Islands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so we got some things from the ship, like silverware and sheets and pillowcases and stuff, and we went into the jungle.
You did?
We contacted some natives there, and because we wanted the dugout canoe to go to a little island and go swimming. So we traded with them, bargained with them, and told them what we wanted, and we ended up with a dugout canoe. And so we had a lot of fun on this little island. The water was clear as glass.
Oh, that's amazing. I might have to go
Yeah.
there. Is it still out there? I mean,
I'm sure today is not the same.
yeah, yeah. Those are my questions. And unless there's anything else that you want to, share, about maybe when you got back home, what it was like. Did you have to talk, did all your family ask you questions, and your friends? And did you still have friends that were out there? Because it was still the Pacific, and that was, that was towards the end. So did you have any friends that made it all the way to the very end?
Well, yeah, and I was in Tokyo Bay. Actually, the war ended.
Oh,
I got off my ship and boarded a Navy transport and was headed for Seattle. And I was out. I got discharged and headed for home.
oh, that's
It was
great.
over for me.
What a great story you have. I know you have quite a few that we're going to get there in their book. So
I just didn't realize that the ocean was so vast. I mean, it took us like 30 days to get across when we zigzagged back, a zigzag course. But I didn't realize, and it goes on and on and on, and you can only see, 10 miles at a time, and you're chasing that horizon. How all of that water and miles and miles and miles deep could stay on that circle, the Earth around like an apple, and yet again, it just stays on there.
That's pretty amazing.
How it always amazed me.
I'm guessing that you're really happy, or that you joined the Navy and the Merchant Marines, and sounds like it was quite interesting and something that you would always remember.
My Navy officer aboard was a gunnery officer. He didn't have anything to do with me, and he didn't know my job anyway. So I really almost, some cases, didn't even talk to him. My job was to work directly with the captain. The radio shack was right next door to his cabin, and when he would come off the bridge at night, he'd come in the radio shack and put his feet up on the desk, and we'd talk for 2 or 3 hours. And I was his eyes and his ears.
Oh, that's great. Do you remember his name by any chance?
Oh gosh, I don't. And especially the Dutch ship, I just called him Dutchie.
Yeah, because there was a couple of Dutch people on there, right? Is that correct?
Well, yeah, there was a Dutch captain with his crew, and then we had Javanese waiters and cooks from Javanese, yes.
Oh, Javanese,
so that was pretty interesting, yeah. And it was also very interesting to copy messages that I would receive in Dutch, and it didn't matter, but copying those words, Dutch words are very long, and when you receive code, you're like a robot. The code goes in your head and it comes out your finger. 3 years and I was in the Navy, I never ever hit the wrong key.
That's
one
good.
Time. Well,
one time.
Once in a while you hit the wrong key, you make a mistake. But when you're hearing code, I can't totally explain it, but it comes right out your fingers to the key on the typewriter. Mm-hmm. You can just type for 2 hours and you'll never make a mistake.
That's great. And did you learn any Dutch language as well?
No.
Can you still? Oh.
Yeah, I did. One thing every night at sunset. The only thing I ever learned was Duncan over Demure.
Okay.
So,
I don't know what that means.
Found out what that meant was dump the garbage.
Well, that's important. All right. Well, this has been quite interesting. Thank you so much, John. You're wonderful. Yeah. You have some great stories. John. Yeah.
Thank you both so much for that great interview and presentation. We've got some questions coming into the chat, but Mr. Knight, I wanted to start with you, if that's all right. And I wanted to ask you, what was the mood like in Tokyo Bay on VJ Day?
And we were in Tokyo Bay. Everybody, of course, was exhilarated that it was over. You know, it'd been a long, terrible, nasty war. And, you know, we lost a lot of people. They lost tons of people. And it was just, war is crazy. But generals say one time, war is to blow things up and crash things and kill people. And I mean, that's the explanation of what it is. So we should avoid it at all costs.
Yes, sir. Is there a message that you would want generations, younger generations like mine, to hear about your experience?
Well, I mean, if they're, you know, if we're attacked, then I think that, you know, we have not only the right but the obligation to, you know, defend our country. I believe that very strongly, but I think that some of these other wars and things we get, skirmishes we get into, we could avoid. And I think that the younger generation, well, I think that they have that mindset. I don't think the younger generation today wants to really get involved in these skirmishes we get into, because it goes on forever. There's no end to it.
Yes, that's certainly understandable. We have a question from the audience. Did you keep in touch with other sailors with whom you served?
You mean after the war was over?
Yes, sir.
Some I did. I had 2 or 3 close friends, very close friends that lived near where I live, not far away, and we did stay in touch for quite some time, which was wonderful. Yes, and unfortunately, I lost some very, very close personal friends. I was a gymnast in high school, and one of my best friends that I worked out with, in fact, we used to work out at Muscle Beach in Santa Monica. It's a very well-known area. And in 1940, 41, we were at Muscle Beach on the bars and the rings, and I lost one of my best friends who used to work out with me there. He was a gunner on a plane and got shot down, and I lost 2 or 3 friends. Some friends on Guadalcanal too. It's very difficult.
Thank you for sharing that. Ms. Bradner, I'm wondering what drew you to these stories of World War II veterans? You've been such a great ambassador for their experiences in modern times. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, there you go. Okay, yeah. You know, it just kind of happened. It was, you know, I worked at the LA Times, and I handled the book section, and I just ended up meeting some great people through it. The band of brothers I interviewed, and then I just and then when I went to the veterans home where John now lives, that's where I met a lot of really great veterans, and they all had great stories. They all wanted to talk, and so I just thought I would put it down on paper, and so we always have it, so you know people will know what happened. You know, so yeah, and that's where I found John, and you know we just always would chit chat and go to In-N-Out Burger a couple times, and you know, and then I said, "You have such great stories. Why don't you make a book?" So that's kind of where it all came from. Yeah.
How is the book coming?
We're working on it. You know, I know when he told me his stories, I said, you should, you know, do this book, and he jumped on it right away. You know, so I just have to do some edits, and I think, you know, we'll be hopefully ready, hopefully by the end of the summer, at least, you know, I mean, maybe earlier. So, yeah, I mean, he has great stories, not just about, you know, the war, but he had, Marilyn Monroe was in his elementary school, and he lived next to her. So he has great stories because he lived in Los Angeles the whole, his whole life. So, in addition to World War II. So, yeah, it's just something that I enjoy. Well, just history, but also John. He's great. The vets. So thanks.
He certainly is. He certainly is. Mr. Knight, we do have a question from the chat. Chris Kolakowski, who gave the first presentation, is wondering if you ever encountered kamikaze aircraft or attacks, and were they frightening? If so,
only at Guadalcanal, and fortunately, their site that they wanted to attack was beyond where the ship was. But yes, only it wasn't kamikaze. They were very high, and they had a bombing site inland somewhere, but they didn't drop anything near my ship. No, it was fortunate. They flew over. They did a flyover.
I was personally really struck by your description of ships in the typhoon rising like mountains.
That's right.
Out of the water. Are there any other mental images that have really stuck with you? I mean, I feel like we can't even imagine fleets like that today.
Well, to give you an example of how powerful it was, and there hasn't been a typhoon since that time. And if you know what a Quonset hut is, you've probably seen them in the movies. Well, they just pour a slab and then they just bolt down this Quonset hut. And we had one on Okinawa that was the post office. And when we came back to that port, that Quonset hut, if you can believe it, was lifted off the ground, and we found it 4 miles away. It tossed it through the air 4 miles away. That's how powerful it was. So being out in that ocean, actually we were safer, but it was still, of course, for an 18-year-old kid, to me, I'm on the flying bridge with the captain, actually, because I'm doing flashing light. For the captain, a radioman can send flashing light faster, actually, than a signalman can, because it's a strange thing. It's hard to understand. When you see the light flash, you don't see it in dots and dashes. Like, let's say they're sending a B. A B would mean da-da-da-da to me. Da-da-da-da. To a signalman, it would be dot, 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 dash. Well, when he consumes dot, 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 dash in his mind, I'm already past him because I'm da-da-da-da. So for some reason, when you see it, it's like you're hearing it at the same time. I can't explain it, but that's the way it works.
Oh, yes, that's definitely understandable. Do you find yourself still thinking in Morse sometimes?
To this day, I can do the whole thing. What's your name?
Sam.
Da-da-da-da-da-da. That's Sam.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah,
that's what you call plain language. Now, we received a lot of code and secret code in what you call code groups, and then the code groups were maybe messages direct to our ship. I don't know how much time we have, but it was a wonderful system, and it all came from England. It was called BAMS, BAMS. That means broadcast to Allied merchant ships, and the whole ocean is divided in a grid, a big grid and you're assigned, and that grid number could be, of course, it's miles square, but let's say we spend a lot of time in area code C. So when we would receive these broadcasts from England, they would at the top of the message they would tell us that they're sending these code messages to all the ships in 6C. So that I would be on the alert and copy all these messages. If our code, our secret code, happened to show up on there, then I would wait till it was all finished and then copy that code message and then decode it for the captain message.
Wow. Yeah, you had to be quick. That's for sure.
Well, you had to be accurate. You had to be very accurate, and of course, out in the ocean and the air and everything else, there's some noises, that interfere with the sound of the code. So you have to really have a trained there. But we spent hours, and I mean, we went to school there at Chavez Ravine from 8 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night, pounding away, and I mean, code all kinds of messages.
Yes, it went to my spam folder.
Oh, we do have another question from the audience. If you could go back and visit any of the places you went during the war, where would you go and why?
Well, I would probably go. I'd probably go to Tokyo. The reason I say that is because when I went to Tokyo Bay, I got off the ship the next morning at 6 o'clock in Seattle. So I didn't stay there. I could have stayed there and for a couple of weeks and visited Japan and had a family at home, and I was the war was over for me. So if I could visit any place, I go to Tokyo.
And Ms. Bradner, has your journalistic career taken you to any of these places that really made an impression on you?
Not the Pacific. That's probably the one place I would like to go. I did get to go to Sicily for another book there in Sicily, and that was great because that's where a lot of the fighting was, and I hope to do more. I went to England. To get the book deal, do all that. But no, I hope to go to some other places, and I think the Pacific would be good because, John just made it sound like, we should go, especially all the different islands. And I think that would be fascinating, especially just go up to Seattle and keep moving. Oh, and also, the Aleutian Islands look like I'd like to go over there at some point.
Yes, there's a national park there now, in fact, or a national memorial.
Yeah, a little cold, but I think I should still
go. Mr. Knight, another question from the audience. What was it like what was December 7th, 1941 like when you first saw the news out of Pearl Harbor?
Well, as a teenager, I was still in high school. It was shocking. I mean, very shocking to me, and we all the guys, especially my age, that was the only thing we were talking about for a long time because we knew that we should go and join and some of it. That's what we did. We joined in the group. We all decided let's go join the Navy, and it was something that was probably the most shocking thing that parents ever will.
Yes, I can only imagine. Have you ever visited the National World War II Memorial in DC?
No, I have not. I've been to Washington. It was a long time ago, and I never have. No, I have not visited the War Memorial. Some of the people that are here at Calvet, the home where I am, they did visit there, but it was about 4 years ago.
Okay.
There was a group from here that went. I did not go.
Were they on an honor flight? Do you remember?
I believe so. Yes, yes. Especially one lady named Millie, and she. I think she was the one was on the honor flight. Yes, because they did talk about that, and some people I saw, visited her and were talking to her about it. So I think she was the one that was on the honor flight.
Great, great. Another question.
Unfortunately, we've lost her. She was a very good friend, and we don't have, we don't have very many women here. Few. And she, at that time, I don't think there were over maybe 3 or 4 women here in this whole place, and there's about 300 veterans here.
Oh wow!
So the odds aren't very good. The cute thing happened. When I first came here, I'd only been here 2 or 3 days, and we were going to dinner, and I went by the nurse's station, and she was sitting there watching TV. She was a cute little redhead, a nurse. She had been a nurse in the Navy, and I hadn't talked to her. I'd just been, maybe a couple of days, 2 or 3 days. She came up to me and she said, "Oh, do you like older women?" And I think she's 11 months old. She thought I was a lot younger. She thought I was a lot younger than she was, so she wanted to know if I liked older women.
Well, all that work on Muscle Beach must have helped.
Yeah. See, it paid off.
Ms. Bradner, have you ever been to the memorial?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I brought my kids there a couple of years ago when it was just opening, I think. Yeah.
Oh,
so, yeah. So no, I enjoyed that. And the one in where's the other? Well, yeah, that's where. I did go there. So I want to go back because it's been a while. And isn't there supposed to be a World War I being built there? I'm kind of going off a little bit, but I thought I heard that they're going to be building a World War I museum. I guess I don't know. That would be interesting to me. Yeah.
Yes, that's being planned on right now. There's a city memorial to World War I right now on the mall for specifically DC veterans in World War I. It's an interesting spot. Well, we would certainly love to host both of you. Yes, it's going in Pershing Park. Thanks,
that makes
sense. Yes, that does make sense. Certainly.
Yeah. My dad was in France during World War I. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I as a kid, I was fooling around up in the attic of our house, and I saw this old, those old big round trunks, wooden trunks. Well, I opened it. I'm a little kid up in the attic, and all this uniform and stuff was in there, and then there was a steel helmet in there with a bullet hole through it. A bullet hole through that helmet. And of course, as a kid, I took all that stuff out and played with it.
Well, was he in the U.S. Army during World War I?
He was in the Army, and he was in artillery.
Okay.
That's why he's deaf in one ear. Yeah, he's deaf in one ear. That's why they wouldn't let him in the Navy. Because he was deaf in one ear. Yeah.
He couldn't hear the code as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he wanted to join. He wanted to get in the Seabees. That's the construction battalion. But they wouldn't let him in because if he's there. Well, I was glad. I didn't want him to go.
Yeah.
He'd served his time, and I think it'd been kind of uncomfortable to be away from the family. Somebody had to be an anchor while all those younger kids were gone.
Certainly. Well, for you, what impact did your service have on your later life? This is from Chris in the audience.
What impact?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the only impact, two things. One was the memory of the guys that we lost. Stays with me forever, and I think about all of them at different periods of my life. We lost them, and how fortunate I was to go across that ocean 7 times, all alone, no escort, no nothing, and zigzag across and then come back alive. And I think about especially those friends of mine that I lost, and then I think about the friend that I had aboard ship that died, and we had to bury him. I think that stays with me, and that is more of an emotional memory for me than anything else.
Yes, we're very grateful for you sharing those experiences with us, so we can try to understand what that must have been like. With your father, did he ever discuss his own service with you? Did you talk about it after you came back?
Not really. I had to kind of dig things out of him. That type of a guy. Big. He was a big bruiser, but he was a type of a guy that's this sort of he kept those kind of things to himself pretty much. I I I just once in a while would dig something out of him, but never got much out of him really at all. He wasn't forward about talking about it. I think a lot of guys are the same way. They don't want to think about it. They want to just like they want to blank that out of their lives because they don't like them. They don't like those memories. But I don't dwell on them. But I certainly think about them because it's like when you lose somebody in your family, you're always you're gonna think about what you've done together, and you wonder, what would it be like if they were still here? So I think it's a natural thing for some, and for some, my dad was just a quiet guy that way. He was very, very strong. He was so strong that I used to do handstands on his hands. He'd lay down on the floor and put his arms up, and I would press do a handstand on his hands. He was that strong. And one bad thing about it was he would break things because he was a very good mechanic. But like, let's say he was tightening the nuts on the head on the engine after you worked on it. Well, it never got tight. Whether he had a wrench, he'd be tightening it, and he'd break it right off. To him, it never got tight. So he broke a lot of things around. So, my mother used to irritate was well because things when he started to fix them. And he was powerful. He was powerful. He was on the in the army. They had what they call a tug of war team. You know what a tug of war is?
Yeah.
He was the anchor. My dad was the anchor, and he broke blood vessels in his legs, holding that anchor. But he wouldn't let him take him.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go up against him. That doesn't.
He was so powerful. But he was a great man because he was like a cowboy. He at 13 he weighed 200 pounds, and he ran a 14 mule team. A 14 mule team is a 13-year-old kid.
Wow.
So it's a pretty amazing. He had a pretty amazing life, and he became a minister. He had quite a Christian experience, and he was a bar hopping, cigar smoking man. And my mother was a Christian, but it's a story I may not have time to tell. He became a Christian because my my little sister was dying of pneumonia. And so he asked God that if he would save his daughter and from pneumonia, because the doctor said she would not live through the night. He made a vow to God that if he would save his daughter, he loved my sister really, because it was his first child, and that he would serve the Lord the rest of his life. And the next morning, she was playing in the living room.
Wow.
He kept his vow and became a minister the rest of his life. And he opened up a church in Hawthorne, California, 85 years ago.
That's amazing.
It's still there.
I'm sorry, which church?
It was a 4-square church, name of the denomination. He opened that up 85 years ago, and it's still there. Yeah.
That's
so
impressive.
He was an amazing man. Amazing man, really was. Yeah.
Did he give you any advice before you went off to serve, or throughout your life that really stuck with you?
You know, my parents, I thank God every night for my parents, because my mother would tell me a few things once in a while. My dad did not, but they both lived such an example that I watched their life, the way they lived, and it was such a perfect example. He had this absolutely wonderful, both of them, and you'd be surprised, but they never ever, my whole life, asked me where I was going, when I was coming home, what I was doing. They never ever asked me that. I started working when I was 8 years old, and I just got a job myself. I worked in a store one time. Walked in and got a job when I was 12. I threaded pipe in a store when I was 12 years old. But they never ever, they just let me they had so much faith in me, they let me do anything I wanted to do. And I never wondered. I always took care of myself, and I made money and bought my own clothes. I always took care of myself.
Wow. This next one is from the audience, and it's for both of you. We'll start with Mr. Knight because he's on screen. But what lessons do you hope that young Americans learn from your service and experience in the greatest generation?
Well, I hope that our generation was so different. See, there was no division. Everybody was together. We didn't talk about politics. I think we're talking too much about. We're too much involved with politics, and a lot of times they want to encourage young people to get involved, but sometimes it causes a lot of division. There's division right here in this home because there's Democrats and Republicans. You know, it shouldn't be that way. We should be Americans, and the politics should not be in our lives. So I think the younger generation is going to be it's going to take time, but it's such an opposite way of life to now as compared to when I was young. Everybody was friendly with each other, and friends to each other, and would back up each other. And we didn't ask what it had nothing to do with it.
Certainly. Thank you. And Ms. Bradner, as a journalist who reports on and shares these stories into the modern time, do you have any lessons that you've learned that you think are not being taught enough today or not understood enough today?
We'll have to go with what, John's saying is that a lot of people history is not really their top, to study, and when you go back, there's still stories that are left out there that people are still finding. And what John just said was just it, it's just be kind to each other and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, all these men and women that went into the war, they did this, a lot of them died, but that's what these were good people, and they wanted to take care of their country. And I think it's really important for, when I did a previous book, I sat down with high school and taught, and some of them didn't even know who the vets are right now, so I think it's something that I would love to go back and talk to, all the schools, because a lot of them came up to me later and they're like, oh, I learned a lot. So, I think history is really something that they all should study a little bit more than they have been. So there's a lot going on there. Yeah. Definitely.
Well, we are about to head into a break. Thank you so much to both of you for your time today. This has been a wonderful interview and a wonderful presentation. I encourage everybody to look out for Pacific Ocean's 11 coming very soon.
Yes.
And also Snapdragon by Miss Bradner, covering Phil Stern, the photographer, and I can see the photos behind you. I can tell that you have a.
That's right. Well, thank you. It was my pleasure. It says thank you for having us. Yes.
And thank you, Mr. Knight, as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. You've been wonderful.
You
Sam.
Too. That's how I'm going to sign my email.
Okay, Sam.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you very much for having us. Okay.
We'll be back at 12 o'clock Eastern with Rear Admiral John Bidoff. So we'll be back here soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.